Hey everyone, Gaijin Goombah here, and for this Goombah story time, I wanted to talk about my love-hate relationship that I have with Zelda. Thankfully, it's back in the love category, and I hope it doesn't come back out. But a lot of things for me with the franchise has changed, and I wanted to kind of talk about where I come from with this game franchise, how it started up, then went down, then went up. The very next Game Exchange episode, after the one that releases this week, is actually going to be starting to talk about Zelda, and I've got so much information to talk about when it comes to Game Exchange, but I wanted to just divulge a little information about this, and I've got a lot to say, so I'm going to try very, very hard not to drag it out too much. So, I've been with this franchise from the very beginning. I'm seeing 30 around the corner, so I've been around for a while, and I've been around long enough to see to see the original Legend of Zelda when it really first came out, and with my young mind, it was just magical, it was optional, and it was secretive. It laid the very foundations of what I loved about this franchise. You only had very vague clues in order to figure out what to do, where to go, and how to get stuff. In fact, it reminds me of a story. I was at my cousin Andy's house, this is back when I was like 9, 10, something like that, and we had spent like 7 hours playing the game, trying to piece everything together. It was like 4 of us in there trying to piece together all the clues, beat all the bosses. We actually got to Ganon, and we had no idea what to do. Cause to us, he just like disappeared and we just got killed by fireballs. It didn't really matter anyway because we didn't have any silver arrows. And come to think of it, we really didn't have a magic shield either, which, makes a lot of sense why level 6 with the wizard robes was, so hard. But, what I loved about it is that it was everything was optional. Finding all the secrets was optional. If you knew where to go, you could immediately go there, get it, and just get stuff done. You didn't necessarily have to go to one dungeon, then another dungeon, then another in an order. You could do whatever you wanted. If you wanted to just go to a dungeon to get your favorite weapon or whatever, and you could, and then come back out and then play the game, you could do that. And it was just wonderful. So moving on to Link's Adventure, I'm not a fan of that game. If you are, that's fine. I don't like it. It's just way too frustrating for me to find fun. Your pathetic attack range, your attack range is shorter than your enemies, which I hated. And Death Mountain is just completely unbalanced, and I just never really got past that part. So then we move on to Link to the Past. Before recently, this probably was my favorite of all the Zelda games. One of the downsides is that the dungeons were much more linear, but you had not one, but 2 massive overworlds, and there really did feel like there was something in every tile. Like in the map before you scrolled the screen. There was either a really nifty item to get, or there could have just been a ton of grass, and you never know what was in that grass until you cut it. It could be rupees, it could be those hearts you need, it could be those sought-after fairies, whatever. I really loved that. The other thing was that if you wanted help in the game, the air quote super guide, it cost you money. You could, yes, technically go talk to the, what was it? Not a wise man, but it was a fortune teller. And they could tell you where to go and what you need to do, but it cost you money. You had to spend resources in order to get it, and I liked that. And, aside from all of that, actually having a really semi-deep story anyway compared to the later games, it was really good. It helped put more things in perspective. Now, following Link's Awakening and the Oracle games, it borrowed heavily from the same formula, but what I will mention is that the appearance of the shovel in Link's Awakening made the overworld that much more fun because it was like twice as many things to explore. I would spend so much time just digging holes in every single tile of the map, trying to figure out what was in there. Then we move on to Ocarina of Time, and this is where, for me personally, I really did get blown away. The game's atmosphere is absolutely phenomenal. And for anyone that ever played the game when it first came out, I don't think anyone would argue with that at all. The one problem, looking back though, that I did have with it is that it felt very, very linear. You had to go in the specific direction the game wanted you to go in, which isn't inherently bad, but it was so different, so distant from the original games. It was just kind of jarring. The other thing too is the overworld felt really empty. Hyrule Field felt really empty. That's not to say that it didn't have its own share of grass to find random items, or to blow holes in the ground to find stuff, but I don't know. Maybe it was the lack of enemies. I really don't know, but it just really felt empty. I hated Navi. What bugs me about Navi is that even if you knew exactly where to go, the moment you'd finish a dungeon or something like that, before you could even get there, Navi was telling you to go there. So if there was better spacing for when she starts yakking at you, that would have been better, but I just didn't like it very much. But definitely going back though, it's not nearly my favorite. One of the things that kind of made me sad is that I don't think there's very much fleshing out of character. We're introduced to some very interesting characters, don't get me wrong. They're memorable, but I don't think they're very deep. Which isn't necessarily bad, but I just didn't like it. The one thing that I really didn't like though was the Master Sword got shoehorned into Ocarina of Time. I don't care what you guys tell me, The whole objective of the child Link section of the game was to get the 3 spiritual stones so you could open the door of time. Nothing was mentioned about the Master Sword, whereas in A Link to the Past, the first, the parallel section of getting the first 3 penance was all about getting the Master Sword so you could actually get into Hyrule Castle and stop Aghanim. So that bothered me quite a bit, because it was just like, oh, is that the Master Sword? Said Navi. And I'm thinking to myself, I suppose, why is it here? But whatever. Majora's Mask. Total different shift, and I really liked it. Big focus on overworld, new ways to travel. You had your feet, Epona, you had the Goron rolling, and you had the Zora swimming. It was great. It put a humongous emphasis on the overworld, and I really, really, really liked it. I also really loved that there was a big focus on side questing versus the individual story. The overarching story was very simple. It was good, but it was pretty simple. Having all of these interactions with all these other characters for all these other quests, I think made it better, and why I think a lot of people would say that Majora's Mask was better than Ocarina of Time. That being said, the one thing that I did not like about Majora's Mask is that you essentially accomplished nothing. And I know a lot of people are completely disagreeing with me right now, but to have done, like the Couple's Mask is a great example, to have done all of that work, and to have it just reset, that really, really bugged me. Nothing really felt progressive, because once I accomplished something, once I made these NPCs happy, once I conquered this great evil, it just reset all over again. So that was really the only thing I really didn't like about the game, and it's I guess a me thing. When I play games like that, I want to see progress, and it didn't quite do it for me, but whatever. It was at this time that I kind of fell out of Zelda. Nothing bad, but I just changed interests in games around a bit. So, moving on to Wind Waker, like I said, I originally passed, I passed on that game because I really didn't like the cartoony look, like the idiot that I was. But I actually recently got it, for the Wii U. Big thanks to Alochi for getting that for me for Christmas. By the way, if you guys haven't heard her Ocarina stuff, you really should. I'll throw up a link. But, I really think from all of the 3D Zelda games, and maybe any Zelda game ever, it has the biggest open world, and I love that. One of the other things that I really, really like about Wind Waker is that it doesn't take too long before you have enough tools to really explore the world. I think that's really critical when it comes to a game like this. And for everyone that complained that the sailing was boring and there wasn't anything to do, I completely disagree. Because not only did the sailing make the world feel big, there were always different things that were happening when you went from destination to destination. Maybe you're gonna get attacked by sharks. Maybe you're gonna find sunken treasure. Just whatever. There's all different kinds of little things that make the overworld just that much more fun. It really made it feel like it went back to the original Zelda, where you could do so much in every tile of the overworld. So that brings me to Twilight Princess, which I've also been playing. I'd figured I'd play the darkest Zelda alongside the most cheerful Zelda, just to keep myself from getting too juxtaposed. But Twilight Princess. Superb story. Absolutely superb story. Good tone. And when I say that, I mean that it goes beyond just being dark, like visually dark. There's real threat in this game. There's real people dying. There's possessions of people. There's real evil going on here, and I think that makes the game that much more solid. Midna's a fantastic character. I love the fact that she's a main part of the game, and I also like the fact that she gives you very limited hints when you ask. Solid plot developments. The characters are really the characters are really fleshed out, and I really like it. The problem is twofold. One, it's the most linear Zelda I have ever played, and that's a really, really bad thing. I never feel like, when the overworld is opened up, I don't feel like there's really anywhere to go, except for the mini games, which aren't too terribly hard, and then when they're done, that's it. I never felt like there was a real big reason to go around the overworld. Maybe to catch bugs, maybe to get that piece of heart in a tree. I don't know. The super long intro also really turned me off. In fact, originally that's what turned me off about the game in its entirety, is that it took a long time to get started, and I felt like it was really, really unnecessary. The second thing that I really don't like about this game are the temples and the dungeons. With the exception of Arbiter's Grounds and the Goron Mines, which I love to death because they've got great mechanics that are unique and original, all of the temples thus far have been so boring and time-consuming. The Water Temple, especially, and the Ice Mansion. Those are two that really stick out in my head that I really didn't like. Especially the Water Temple. It took so long. It took me 3 hours to get through that stupid temple. And by the time I got done with it, I just felt like I never wanted to pick up the game again because of just how long it took and how tedious it was to get everything done. And that stupid frog boss, anywho. I couldn't figure out what the point of the kids were. besides to drive the plot railroad. I never felt invested in them. I never felt like they really brought anything, except for that one little kid. I can never remember his name, but the guy that starts the shop. The rest of them, I never found a reason to care about them. They never really seemed to drive the plot too much, except as an excuse to get Link out into the open world, which I didn't think that had to be anyway. The last thing I will say about Twilight Princess that I utterly hated was the Skull Kid and the Golem minigame. And I use the term game loosely before the Master Sword. Okay, Moldrum was annoying to fight, but you got the Master Sword. Jabu Jabu's belly was annoying, but then you got the Master Sword. I have not seen a just before Master Sword complexity, or rather the last big hurdle, like they save the biggest hurdle right before you get the Master Sword. I have never seen one as ridiculous as this. I cheated both times because I just didn't care. It was right after the Water Temple and I didn't need this crap. So, anywho, I will say too, I would have liked the wolf sections if they weren't forced on you. Like, if from the get-go, if from the get-go, you had access to the wolf, like the wolf transformation ability, but there were certain sections where you had to do it, I would have thought that would have been infinitely better because you still had the choice to do it. Whenever you got into the Twilight Zone, and you were basically stuck as being a wolf and you couldn't go back, anything like that, I hated that, and that's the linear problem, that the game has. Great story though! Great story, really fleshed out characters, really good tone, but linear as heck, and I hate that in Zelda games. Not to mention the snowboarding was kinda weird, but whatever. Ocarina of Time 3DS. This is where I rage quit the entire series for a very long time. I really liked Ocarina of Time, so I wanted to see what the game looked like, all prettied up in HD. And it looked good, it played good, but my god, Navi was bad enough. To see the sheet guiding stones, where you crawled into them and they literally showed you exactly where to go and what to do. I hated that so much. I even made a Goomba Rage based on it. And I was just like, enough. I already heard terrible things about Skyward Sword, about Fi literally telling you how to do everything that you're supposed to intuitively know by playing the game. And I thought to myself, this is it, this is over, I've had enough, Zelda is dead to me, because I never thought I would ever get to freely explore somewhere without having my hand held ever again. And then A Link Between Worlds comes out, and it fully restored my entire faith in this franchise. Again, not one, but two overworlds with much, much more to find than A Link to the Past. You had the items, you had the Mai-Mais, you had the puzzle, air quotes, dungeons, you had heart containers and heart pieces, and the money gathering. You had to get a lot of money in this game. And it invited so much overworld exploration, and I had missed it for so long. Access to all of the items early in the game created just total exploration capability, whether you had to buy them or they were given to you. It opened the world almost immediately, but it was balanced in a way where you could just go anywhere you want. You could do any dungeon you want, whenever you wanted to, and it was just fantastic. The story was surprisingly deep, as well as the design and the characterization for a top-down Zelda. I was very, very impressed by that. And on top of that, the action moves really, really fast. I've got a joke with one of my friends at my other job, and he says that he bases his enjoyment of Zelda based upon how fast he can break a pot. For me, it's how soon can I swing the sword. The sooner the better for me. I also like how the Master Sword wasn't shoehorned like every other game in the franchise, save for Skyward Sword. Your objective was to get it, and I just loved it so much. Now, I actually don't own Skyward Sword yet because I need to finish Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. But two things. I'm very disheartened by Skyward Sword for its lack of overworld exploration, the retreading of old ground, and Fi. But I am super interested in the story, and this is how I've learned how to appreciate Zelda. This is the breakdown. For me, a top-down Zelda game is the way you play Zelda. The 3D Zelda games is how you experience Zelda. This mental breakdown, well, not breakdown, that sounds awful, but this sort of reasoning is how I was able to get back into Zelda after I just crashed and burned with it. My generation, and the generations after, we've been raised to hyper-criticize every negative aspect about everything, to the point where we just can't really enjoy the experience for what it might actually be. You know, there may be some bad things here and there, but there's also some good things. I had a lot of bad things to say about Twilight Princess, but in the whole, I'm still enjoying it because there are pockets of things that I really, really liked. It's damning with praise, and it's something that we don't do anymore. It's something that my generation doesn't do anymore. in my opinion, there's no best Zelda game. There isn't, because Zelda games are constantly doing new things. I would say that, yeah, you can have favorites, but no, there is no such thing as a best Zelda game. That's impossible. But I guess what it all comes down to is that we as gamers, we enjoy rending games limb from limb like it was a drug. Or it was like some kind of sexual dopamine release. It's really bad, guys. And it's because of that mentality that I had completely abandoned a franchise that I now can very much love all over again, if not more than I did before. If this in-development cosplay and, my attempts to actually learn the ocarina for what it is as an instrument, if that doesn't prove it to you, well, maybe the next Game Exchange, or rather I should say Game Exchanges, will. But, that's really all I've got to say about Zelda. If you're someone who was like me, who looked at Zelda and thought, wow, this is nothing but hand-holding tutorials, at least give A Link Between Worlds a shot, and then see if that doesn't change your opinion about the whole franchise, because it really did for me. So, anyway guys, that's all I've got for this, Goomba story time, so until next time, this is Gaijin Goombah, signing out.